to please take your seats as we are about to begin the first technical session of the day. Request everyone to kindly be seated so that we can start our session. I hope you enjoyed your tea, had some engaging networking. We now move into session one, which is renewable energy, hydrogen, and global pathways. This session sets the tone for our discussions, focusing on how clean energy foundations like renewables and hydrogen are reshaping India's net zero roadmap. It is my pleasure to invite the session moderator, Shri Sanjay Rekhi, lead expert, Stratedyne and former CFO, Ultratech Cement. Our distinguished panelists for this session are Shri Pawan Chaudhary, Advisor to Chief Minister, Government of Haryana; Shri Mukul Saxena, Head and Standards Research, Still Council for Green Jobs; Dr. Supreet Kaur, Strategic Partner, Vibrant Energy; Dr. Parminder Kaur, Assistant Professor, LBS Institute of Management; Ms. Purnima Anand, President, International BRICS Forum; Shri Neeraj Bhatnagar, President, Energy Infrastructure Technologies. Shri Sanjay Rekhi is lead expert, Stratedyne, former CFO, Ultratech Cement. Sir has skills in ESG integrated governance, risk and compliance, sustainability reporting with financial reporting. He holds a certificate in business responsibility and sustainability reporting from Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. Sir has 3 decades of experience, including the leadership positions in services and manufacturing with Indian and global names. Sir, we welcome you. Pawan Chaudhary, Advisor to Chief Minister for Foreign Cooperation Department, Government of Haryana; Gurugram Parliamentary and CSR Trust at Chief Minister Office, Haryana. He has approximately 18 years of experience investment promotion strategy advisory across different sectors with public sector clients. Sir has multi-sectoral extensive work experience including strategy and policy development and implementation across various states in India. Sir has been a part of organizations such as Invest India, the National Investment Promotion and Facilitation Agency, and is currently working as an advisor to the Foreign Cooperation Department, Government of Haryana. Thank you, sir, for joining. Shri Mukul Saxena is the Head and Standard Research Skill Council for Green Jobs. Sir is an integral role in the growth of training and skilling initiatives for the Tata Power Company Limited, leading in the domain of power generation, transmission, distribution, and allied industries. integrated deployment of engineering, instruction design, and information technology expertise in the unique combination that leverages his experience over 35 years. To engineer creativity is his passion, scaling creative teams. Dr. Supreet is a sustainable development strategic partner at Vibrant Energy. She is a strategic thinker with 10 years of experience in research and techno-strategic analysis, a dynamic and result-oriented professional accustomed to managing projects in agile, fast-paced, and deadline-driven team environments. Dr. Supreet is adept at developing critical solutions while standardizing and improving current practices and procedure. A huge welcome, ma'am. Dr. Parminder is an assistant professor, LBS Institute of Management. She teaches research and sustainability, entrepreneurship, clean energy, biofuels, and electric vehicles, aiming to translate research into impactful policy interventions. Dr. Parminder holds PhD in chemical engineering from IIT Delhi with specialization in sustainable development and circular economy. We welcome her. Ms. Poonima Anand is President BRICS International Forum, Global Strategic Policy Advocate, former World Bank consultant, champion of South cooperation and sustainable development. She leads initiatives that bridge policy, academia, and grassroots developments across emerging economies. With 35 plus years in international diplomacy, public policy, and social innovation, she has worked to advance South cooperation, promote multilateral dialogue, and develop sustainable solutions to global challenges. Sri Neeraj is the President Energy Infrastructure Technologies. Sir has 34 years of rich and varied Indian and global expertise of projects, market research, technology transfers, joint ventures, human resource development, export marketing development. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome them all with a huge round of applause. With great pleasure, I now hand over the session to our moderator, Shri Sanjay Rekhi.
Welcome, friends, and without wasting much time, I'll just start off now. I think right from the childhood, we had been always coached not to score a zero. Work hard to really score the highest marks. But I think here the theme is on achieving net zero, which is not going to be easy for any one of us. So anyway, with this note, I just start off with a small addressal to really give you a backdrop of this session. Technologies to reduce emissions at source is an important first step on the path to net zero. I hope we all agree. And at source is underlined in my point of view, and what Sanjay Gupta ji also I recollected what he addressed exactly. And at the very first step is the clean energy. So we can feel the purity of that energy once you really capture emissions right at the source, rather than allowing it to really spread across in the environment and spoil it completely. The lazy approach of ignoring technologies and opting for carbon credits is neither advisable, and nor the carbon markets have developed as rapidly as necessary. In any case, if you were to ask my personal view on carbon credits, is that it's like similar to sinning and then hiring a priest to pray in atonement. These days are, I think we know, Pitra Paksh and sinning. It's awareness which I'm trying to really create amongst all of us. And to see that, as we all agree, it's a must to eliminate the sin rather than pray for absolution. In a few weeks, we will once again start discussing about burning of stubble, the Parli, and pollution over the capital. While this issue does not get the same in relation to other parts of the country, it is a fact that we are agrarian society and all farms have stubble, and all stubble is biofuel. Today, we see farms having 4 to 6 solar panels powering the water pump. This is an effective off-grid solution. We see biofuel plants serving local communities, biofuel plants developed by private equity in Uttarakhand, Central Himalayas, supply clean energy to multiple villages using locally gathered pine needles and creating sustainable livelihoods for more than 100 families. These projects are directly operated and owned by local communities and include power situations and stations and improved coke stoves made from local materials. Similarly, Indian National Bioenergy Program specifically promotes small-scale biogas plants in rural households, dairy farms, and community centers, especially in northern states such as Punjab and Haryana. They serve cooking, lighting, and agricultural needs, reducing costs and indoor pollution for rural populations. These and some similar initiatives bring hope. But with a population of 140 crores that aspires to improve its standards of living, we can never go enough. Attempting to solve these issues on a scale at the other end of the spectrum in the National Green Hydrogen Mission, country that historically depended on imported energy has the audacity under the mission to visualize becoming an exporter of green hydrogen. Some of us would have seen Tata launching an 18 months pilot testing trucks fueled by green hydrogen already. The investment plan aggregates over $100 billion, and Indian industry would do well to align to the project and draw on vast technological and financial support being put in place or is already in place under the new Renewable Energy Ministry. Solar energy is relatively low intensity source of power that cannot be utilized in what we know as hard to abate sectors, typically cement, steel, fertilizers, ammonia, and chemical. So India's installed solar energy exceeded 80 gigawatts hours. This plentiful solar energy is based and used to make hydrogen, which is a high-intensity energy source. If hydrogen is made from coal-fired thermal plant, it is gray. It needs a green source, and India has plenty of solar. That reminds me of a small benchmarking research activity conducted by World Benchmarking Alliance, which has made a very interesting study and outcome and inference drawn of worldwide power sector power plants, and they have tried to rank those countries in terms of ACT scores, which we call as Accelerated Climate Transition Scores. And you would be surprised the top 10 are none from Asia. Top 10 of those power sector plants where there's a potential to really reduce emissions by assigning ACT scores, which I just mentioned are nothing but Accelerated Climate Transition Scores, which signifies that using the best practices in the industry, if those changes are made, innovations are made in the way of producing power, they have a potential to really using the same technology, achieve higher scores of as high as 54. The top 10, amongst the top 10, Denmark Ørsted power plant stands out, which is the #1 plant which has the highest potential and which have displayed already in terms of improving upon the emissions. Followed by, of course, Portugal, Italy. I can name them. I think we can always share a study if anybody is interested personally. Please feel free to contact me. But if you see the turn of events and compare it with the Indian scenario, the Indian players, which were also featuring as a part of the WBA study, nothing to get little discouraged, but we have a long distance to cover. We have NTPC, which is ranked 54 in a lot of 60. We have Maharashtra Genco, which is in the end of the whole list. Tata Power has been 39th ranked in the ACT scores, and JCW ranks 30th in the whole list of 60 plus world power sector players. So these are just examples to really give that we have a long distance to travel. And but the silver lining is that the ACT scores are there where they show the potential, and the silver lining is again in terms of working towards it to really achieve them. Coming back to now, I was talking about the coal-fired thermal plant. It's grey and it needs grain source, and India has plenty of solar. And I think the ACT scores of all our players always definitely give a silver lining in terms of achieving those and making efforts towards that to really achieve green power. This technology magic of converting low intensity energy source into high intensity one makes cement into green cement, steel into green steel, and fertilizers into green fertilizers, and so on. And in keeping with the theme of net zero, green hydrogen manages to bring emissions at source down to potentially zero. Given this criticality of balancing considerations for Mother Earth and the need of the population, this Net Zero Power Summit is well timed, and I am honored and privileged to moderate the session along with eminent speakers having practical experience and insights. Thank you. Over to now, start the session. We have just begun, so the cheer can be always at the end. Thanks for the encouragement, and thanks for the kind words spoken. Hello. Yeah. I can't see Pavanji here. But anyway, my first question would go towards the national calamities which are happening, which are very, very evident and visible in our country by itself. If I would choose to really request maybe Mukul to really see that, how do you view these risks which are already influencing renewable energy rollout at the state levels, though it's not very much particularly to your area of domain of working, but would request if you could try to throw some light on that. And if disasters affect projects, resilience depends on people. So to that extent, you become a very important person to really throw some light on that.
Sure. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, or rather good morning. Just to give a little background to what the calamities have been, I'm sure you have all been seeing the news, and for the past more than 2 weeks, I think, we have not been seeing anything but floods. Floods, fires, landslides, earthquakes. Earthquakes are not that many, but landslides, torrential rain, cloudbursts, floods, all of those have been all over the place. They are not localized to any one state or any one region. They are all over the country. They are all over the world. The progression of climate change that has been happening I don't know if many of you are aware, I'm sure some of you will be. There was a target set by the COP26 which said that we should limit the temperature rise to a maximum of 1.5 degrees from the industrial average of the 1950s. So that was the target that had been set, and this was the target set for 2030. 2 years ago, we breached that target. We meaning the Earth. The average temperatures across the Earth rose by more than 1.5 degrees. And this was 6 years or maybe 7 years ahead of the plan. We have already crossed the point of no return. Climate change is not going to reverse. We are not going to be able to reverse what has happened. We can only mitigate it, we can only delay it, and probably repurpose, adapt to the changes rather than avoid the changes. We can't avoid the changes. All of these, I'm sure you will be able to relate, all of these changes, all of these calamities that have been happening. I'm sure you will be able to correlate to deforestation. You will be able to correlate to industrialization, urbanization, basically the interference of man with nature. And that is a concern. It's a concern because interference of man with nature is the basis of our economies. It is the basis of industrialization. And therefore, how do we combine the two? It's paradoxical. If our industries have to grow, if our economies have to grow, how can we grow them in a way that the environment is not harmed? And this is something that we need to, one, get educated on, and then we need to get skilled on the pathways of how to do it.
Rightly said, Mukul. So how can India's workforce and skill standards help make renewable projects both scalable as well as disaster ready?
Okay, so scalable and what was the second point?
Disaster ready.
Disaster ready.
Because
so sustainable.
As you said rightly that we all are involved in it.
Yes.
In that case, what is the prerequisite strikes us in terms of getting ready for the disasters which are become now every year affair, and also becoming scalably skillful manpower could be there, and skill could be developed to really combat and face these situations.
Sure. So the first thing, in my view, the first thing that we have to each one of us has to realize is that each one of us has to do something. This is not going to be done by United Nations. It's not going to be done by UNFCCC. It's not going to be done by Geneva. It's going to be done by each one of us. Each one of us has to play a role. Otherwise, we are not going to be able to handle it. We will only be sufferers. We won't be preventers. So that was just the background. But in terms of how projects can become more scalable and more disaster ready, scalability of projects requires the growth of revenue or the growth of the output without a proportional growth of input. That is true scalability. Because unless the scaling happens only of the output and not the input, unless that happens, the business itself is not profitable.
Right.
And that is something that requires new practices. It requires new strategies. We can't simply go about it mindlessly. So we have to follow design. We have to design the strategy. We have to design a pathway, and then we have to get skilled for it. Because every change requires a different way of working. So those skilling programs are very important for change in behavior. And that's going to be important for scaling, because unless those change behaviors happen, we won't be able to bring in people with those behaviors who can go ahead with that, or we won't be able to repurpose or reskill the people that we already have. So that's how it is.
So skills make project possible, but projects need scale. Supreet, your view on this, where do you see the fastest opportunities of solar and wind scale up in next India's net zero pathway?
Yeah, thank you so much. So good afternoon, everyone. I think when it comes to solar and wind, it has been like India is already has so many policies and schemes already floating in. The point that Mukulji just now mentioned, like the behavioral change, the community engagement also comes into picture. That's how the awareness raising programs need to be kind of brought into picture more. People are a little bit aware, like if we go to the remote areas and all, we see like people are aware about, they want to put up a solar panel, for example, on their rooftop. But how to go about it, whom to be reached out to, these kind of things need to be made aware to the local people. Also, when it comes to the fastest opportunities in terms of solar and wind, I think the states such as Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, which have the highest potential for all these renewable energy projects, though they are being made equipped with kind of setting up the project, implementing it, and running of the project. But what we see at the end or after few years is either they are not functional in the sense like what we envisaged, what we thought of, due to any reason. Also, one reason could be the technical skill set that is lacking. The capacity building of the people who are involved in the overall setting of the plant, O&M of the plants are actually required. And that's how if we work on all these things like awareness raising programs as well as improving the technical skill set for these projects, I think we'll be able to have the fastest opportunities for both the sectors. Also, I'll say like in my viewpoint, the ministries are actually working really hard to a certain extent, and even the other bodies who are involved in bringing up policies and schemes very quickly every now and then. Only thing, sometimes they are just on the tables or something like that, or they reach out to the urban population but not to the rural remote areas where they could be also the best beneficiaries out of it. As rightly said beforehand in other sessions also, like in the introductory session, like rural areas are actually very kind of climate either neutral or close to climate negative situations. So we should also focus on those areas as well. Yes.
Thanks. I think so. If we recap, we see that it all starts from mankind, we and you. It starts with the mindset, and then mindset change, how to have the change in behavior, because the thoughts which we carry can be put in words, and once put in words, they become actions. So unless the thought process and this change is not brought out, apart from the skill set, which Mukulji also mentioned and which Supreet also is trying to mention, any of those projects, whether be it solar or wind, cannot take off if as effectively as it would be required. Well, anyway, thanks. And solar and wind are vital, but hydrogen can fill the gaps. Parminder, your thoughts on this, please? And on this, the question is, how can hydrogen complement renewables to deliver reliable 24/7 net zero power?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, FFI, for the kind invitation. This Net Zero Summit is the wonderful idea to break the silos, to bring academicians and industry and people from the ministry together on the same platform. Thank you, FFI, for the kind invitation. So coming back to your question, so it's true that we have started about the solar energy long ago. We have huge solar panels across the globe. So solar and wind are important part of our nation. Like we have multiple states who are rich in solar energy. So solar is there, wind is there. Now comes hydrogen into picture. So when we have solar energy, so the problem with solar energy we feel that solar is there for the like 8 hours a day, and then rest of the time we don't have solar. So it will not produce electricity energy during when we don't have sun. When we have a cloudy day, again there is no energy production through solar panels. So the production is not consistent. Similar is with wind farms. When we have running wind, so wind energy is being produced, but then there is a time when energy is not produced. So to break that intermittency, this is a general perception about renewable energy, that they are not a continuous source of energy. So to break that intermittency in the renewable energy supply, hydrogen comes into picture. So hydrogen, when we have solar energy during that 8 hours of the day, so we need to store that energy for some other time of the day when we don't have solar. So storage of energy can be done through batteries. Batteries can store it for a shorter period of time. Here comes hydrogen. Hydrogen is used to store that energy produced through solar panels, and then it can, through fuel cells and other methods, can again generate electricity back whenever it is required. So hydrogen breaks that silo and it integrates, it helps to provide energy when we don't have that connection of solar and wind. And also when we talk about hydrogen, so hydrogen is produced through different sources. In general, we use the term hydrogen, but because property is same, whatever the source is hydrogen. But large amount of hydrogen is produced through natural gas steam reforming, and then coal is used. So 95% of hydrogen right now is produced through those sources. We talk about green hydrogen. So green hydrogen is the one in which we use water. We use electrolyzers to break down water into hydrogen and oxygen. So for running electrolyzer, we will require renewable source of energy. Then only we can call it as green hydrogen. So solar is required to produce green hydrogen, and hydrogen is required to store solar energy. So they actually complement each other. As an example, like recently I was reading in news that Gujarat is a solar rich state. So they have, in the Kandla port, they have large amount of solar panels. So they are using hydrogens to store that energy so that the supply of energy is consistent throughout the year. So they are going to complement each other. There is no competition that solar is better or hydrogen or wind or biofuel. Actually, we are going to require all these sources of energy to become net zero by 2070. I hope that I am able to provide the appropriate answer. Thank you.
So hydrogen links India to global stage. So there I remember Purnima. Let's bring you in. How can India attract more international clean energy partnerships to accelerate net zero?
Thank you. First of all, good morning to everybody. I am honored to be present here, and I am thankful to Deepak ji to organize such an energetic program from the Federation of Indian Industry. So today we all are here because we want to discuss about energy. And energy is a resource from sun to nuclear energy. So many chapters, so many lessons are there to discuss, to say, but here it is not enough time. I will speak only some concrete point, as our moderator, Mr. Chaudhary, told me, what is Indian stage at global arena. Nowadays, you know, after Second World War, we were working under the umbrella of United Nations, World Bank, America, and European culture. And they are established countries, developed countries, and India is developing country. After Copenhagen Summit, they declared ESG rules, ESG governance, and we have to follow it. We all say very easily that we should not make dam, we should not cut the mountain, we should not do this and that. But we are developing country, we were in the villages, we were only farmers. Now we need modern infrastructure. That's why metro cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, they are developing high-rise building structures, and they are not caring how deep water is going and how they will get energy in their apartments, because they are creating every day a number of apartments. So here, as Dr. Parminder said, she explained very well that how solar energy to hydrogen energy we reach and what is the place, how hydrogen energy is placement for the other energy resources. As I know, in international arena, America and Russia is having nuclear power plants, and they are supplying electricity needs and energy needs for the people through these plants, and they are having enough energy resources from oil and gas industry also. And they are using hydrocarbons, and carbon minus credit is also an issue that all government should have it. So India is having high pressure under ESG governance program that either we should lose our developing phase or we should follow the ESG rules. So this is very important critical point where we need to understand what is our position and what pathway we should use in future. Because we cannot stop our development. As a patriotic Indian, I would like to say, we need to develop. But here, how moderate conditions we can use through modern technologies. So under that, hydrogen energy is good solution, but in metallurgy industry, in other big industries, it is very expensive affair. I know one project through BRICS countries that in India, they are interested to start very most modern steel plant. You know Tata in our country, they are known for the steel. Tata Steel is famous everywhere, and Tata is the biggest exporter and importer of steel. But now many other companies also rised, and they are developing different kind of steel plants in India. But for most modern steel plant, they required hydrogen energy and hydrogen plant. And it is equally expensive to the whole plant. So here we need to care what to do. We should use traditional methods. We were using coal, we were using other electric method, maybe solar energy. Solar energy is not so effective as Dr. Kaur said, because we are having only 8-hour sun and it is not everywhere. So question is that India is a developing country. In global map, how we should make our strategies and policies for further development with hydrogen energy. So this is very important conference, and we need to take care, of course. If we will not take care of environment situations, then we will lose our people, our states, our infrastructure. We are observing, like in Punjab, in Uttarakhand, in Himachal, we are observing how things are destroying. So it is also lesson for us. So it is very critical and turbulence time. It is very scientific, as Mr. Mukul said, that we have to face the problems. We have to face the destruction. But how we can slow down and how we can little bit try to change. So this is the situation and it is critical, but I feel that scientists will find some solutions. We should have positive hopes. And as president of BRICS International Forum, I know that BRICS countries are having very good traditional solutions. We should not go for very international or American or European solutions. We are having very good traditional solution for energy saving and use of energy and green energy solutions. So India, China, Russia, South Africa, Brazil, they are doing very good and they are changing their system. And they are using renewable energy, solar energy, wind energy, and many other sources for their development. So this kind of solutions, discussion, and dialogue is very important, and such conferences need to be continued. And this year, many BRICS countries, scientists will come to India, and I will find India will find good space in BRICS countries' roadmap of energy. And we are having very bright future because our scientists and our local people, our farmers, our tribals, they are very good. And they know how to save environment and how to save their tradition values to grow together. Thank you very much. So much to say. We will discuss later during group meetings because I think time is short. I cannot speak more. And so many scientific things are available in Google and all, that you all are scientists and you are all are expert present here. I regard all of you, and I pay my tributes to all the victims who uh, lost their lives during last 1 month floods and earthquakes and other problems by nature. So thank you very much. We will all together and we will find good solutions for our common cooperation and growth. Thank you. And thank you FI to invite me. Thank you.
We have more questions for you too. So,
Yes.
okay, thanks. So I think a quick recap again in terms of what we really went through. Sorry. So a quick recap now. We started with you and me. So the involvement of the people. Then we talked about the skill gap which we have to be geared up for disaster management and to combat and see how do we really see that the climate change impact can be minimized. And also that we don't just have to reduce emissions, we have to also remove emissions right from the source to really capture it. And then followed by, of course, in terms of the project, how the wind and the solar have gaps to really be filled by hydrogen. But hydrogen also needs a lot of investments. Now coming back to investments, then we see what the world is really following in terms of controlling the emissions that Parminder tried to explain us. And but what I could infer is that something which is on ground, which we people know, nobody else knows. So we got to be grounded and see that, what we can learn from the western part of the world, but also see that, not forget our traditional ways, which our old, I think, traditions have been also teaching us, which we sometimes have been forgetting, but then it's a quick recap and bringing it on ground. Now coming to another important aspect, which I don't see my another panelist being there, Neeraj, but I would like to address something on the waste to energy projects becoming more and more stronger part of net zero. And on this, I can just try to make an attempt to really see from my experience what I could gather in my manufacturing. My last organization, Ultratech, switching over from a service industry background to a manufacturing one gave me a deep insight in terms of what really on ground manufacturing has to go through in terms of really seeing the nuances and seeing that, what they could contribute to the environment in the real sense. I belong to the cement sector last, which I worked for, and I could see that, what great potential this industry had becoming, being one of the part of the hard to abate kind of industry sector. And the waste was something which we identified. We can see that, waste can be divided into two. I saw that, to replace the fossil fuel, since commercial purchases were also as a part of my CFO role, that in one of the units of Ultratech, that was Rajshri Cement Plant, housed somewhere close to Karnataka in Malkhed, Gulbarga district, a very, very remote and isolated area, but I think highly dominated by the agriculturalists, the farmers which were there. And we had a complete tur dal belt completely there. And there were a lot of husks which were there of tur dal, which was getting wasted. And that waste used to be of no price to the farmers at all. We tapped that resource. We involved the community there in terms of procuring those at a price from the farmers, by which the local living also got encouraged, that they are getting something out of the waste also. And we use that as a fuel for our power plant. Followed by the fact that, in any case, the municipal waste has been a very big problem in terms of utilizing it. So we utilize the municipal waste as well in terms of utilizing them, in terms of the big kiln, which were there for the cement plants utilized, and the lot. The rice husks, the chili waste, all these are examples which are biofuels replacing the fossil fuel. So what I see is that this is a very big, I think, contributor in terms of achieving net zero. And I think it is only the question is that what potential, what peak we can try to achieve in terms of actioning these more and more industry-wide, not just the cement industry. Now, quickly I take my question to Mukul now, in terms of the training and community benefit being the key to scaling. My question would be on, can training also accelerate new opportunities in carbon accounting and credits for renewables?
Certainly. So training, the impact on carbon accounting and scalability. Is that? Absolutely. So I have a question for you. Do you think we know what we are doing if we can't give it a name?
Please, any answers for the audience?
Do you think we know what we are doing if we can't give it a name? So I see some shakes of the head, which means we can't. So do I take that as agreed?
No, let's answer yourself.
Okay. So we don't know. What we can't give a name to, we don't know. And if we don't know it, we can't change it. And if we can't change, we can't improve. So carbon accounting is the place where we start knowing, where we start giving names and numbers. So actually, in my long career of training and skilling, I realized that measurement is something which is slightly different from how we realize it. So measurement, typically we imagine it as using a scale, saying it's 6 centimeters or 11 centimeters or 5 meters or whatever. Actually, that is just one part. Measure, the word measure is made of two parts. Me assure. So it assures me of something. The unit and the number that we talk about is only for communication. It is for common understanding between people. So if I say something is far,
Absolutely.
I don't know how far it is. I don't know how far you think it is. It may be 5 kilometers may be far for me. They may not be far for you. So 5 kilometers suddenly makes it consistent. And that's what carbon accounting does. So instead of saying that we have a lot of carbon, and we have it coming from this, and everything else, carbon accounting actually breaks it down and consolidates the entire picture to say how much is coming from where. And the lowest hanging fruits are where it is coming most from.
Totally agree, Mukul. In fact, if we don't know, if we don't measure, then what do we do? What do we manage then? Because I truly believe in measuring to manage. So if you measure it, and for that you need skill, it's not a really easy job. So the skill development in this particular area would really form the baseline by which organizations would come to know really.
Absolutely.
In terms of where do they stand and where do they have to carry themselves up. And especially when we are talking about capturing these emissions at the source, that holds the key. In fact, you nail it completely by not just allowing it at all, rather than, really like curbing and controlling them at the beginning. Now, Supreet, I have a question for you quickly. So how do we really ensure solar and wind projects bring direct economic and social benefits to communities?
Yes, so I'll talk about the social impacts first. Revenues definitely come out of it when people start getting output, and sometimes there is co-ownership also involved, revenue sharing is also involved. The social impact that is there, like firstly, because I've been in the environmental sector for a longer time, like first and foremost that we see that you as a person, for example, me as a person have that satisfaction that I'm contributing well towards the environment. For example, if I'm involved in a renewable project, especially let's say here the solar or wind, although these both projects will not be the kind of the sole things, however, integrated approach is really involved when it comes to renewable energy projects. Also, the second part regarding the social impact is the behavioral change. There's a lot of behavioral change that happens during the conceptualization of the project as well as during the implementation of the project among the people who are all involved, whether on ground or at the policy level or at any level. The third is the job creation that comes into picture. Like it starts from ground zero to higher levels, like the manufacturers, the implementers, as well as the enablers, everyone, whoever is involved, the job creation is there. So that gives an empowerment to the people also. So these three social impacts are very important when it comes to any renewable energy project. And I truly believe in the integrated approach of putting up the renewable projects into picture.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah, so coming to the first part, which was, sorry,
It was
the direct economic part. So definitely when there are jobs and all, the people are benefited out of it. If let's say 2 or more communities are involved in any of the renewable project, energy project, be it waste to energy, be it solar, wind, or any other. So revenue generation is one thing that is also seen. And when you go to the, especially to the VCs and all, they talk about what is the output in terms of money, so that they can put into picture, they can help the enabler or the manufacturer also further. So revenue generation is actually very important, and also that brings to me to the point, like somewhere or the other, these projects contribute to a lot of the economy of India, definitely. We though are developing now, we have a vision of being a developed country, but considering the diverse set of population that we have, considering the local needs of every situation, let's say, like we were talking about the local needs and everything, that we will be coming up with unique solutions, definitely. So I think that's how direct economic growth and social
totally
impacts are
agree with you.
involved.
Totally agree. So I think without community, economically and socially, you can't really progress in that project at all. So, and now it's a small question to Parminder now. Beyond electricity, where do you see hydrogen cutting emission fastest? Steel, transport, or any other sector, so to say?
Yeah, actually, this is the question everyone is asking these days. So, like hydrogen is something which is not new. We know that there are various industries which are using hydrogen since long time back. We have ammonia, fertilizer. There we are already refineries. We are already using hydrogen. So what's new is that how we can decarbonize hard to abate sectors like steel and cement. So you must be aware about. So they are very they require high amount of power. So how we can integrate hydrogen into them is one of the key questions. So we have net zero commitment by Tata Powers or Tata Steel or all cement industries. So everyone has their net zero commitment. So hydrogen has to play an important role here. Now beyond industry, there are multiple initiatives which are going on in the country. Like recently, a few days, a month ago, there was something in news about heritage to hydrogen. So we have already cleared the test stage of hydrogen trains. So we have electrolyzer manufacturing capacity in Jhajjar, Haryana. So Government of India is planning to connect the cities which are a heritage of India or which are in hilly states through these hydrogen trains. Hydrogen is going to play an important role in decarbonization of marine sector. We have different ports which are getting ready to incorporate hydrogen into them. And then one very interesting initiative which I came across was about Deepak sir has also mentioned, and you have also mentioned about, is net zero by aviation sector. So our various airports, around 70 airports, are already moving towards carbon neutrality. Our New Delhi airport is carbon neutral. They have huge amount of solar power. So one of the airport is about, which has become, was the first one to have solar power, was Cochin International Airport. So CIAL has also under the mission hydrogen of Hydrogen Valley mission of Ministry of Science and Technology and MNRE, they are coming up with hydrogen plant at the CIAL International Airport. So these are some of the key sectors and some of the initiatives which are giving hope for greater decarbonization through multiple sectors.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks. So now, global lessons also matter too in this direction. So Purnima, what lessons from BRICS or other international net zero platforms can India apply at home? Could be a great learning for all of us. So if you could just throw some light on that.
This is very important question because nowadays India position is neutral. Always India tried to be neutral due to our non-violence policies and peace policies. But during last 2 months, we heard so many things about tariff and BRICS and American issues, currency issues. So India is having very critical situation nowadays, and BRICS countries are making their own roadmap of energy development. And in BRICS countries, China, Russia, India is having very major role in energy sector. So BRICS is upcoming, and BRICS is having control over energy sector of the world. Because Russia is very good in oil, gas, LNG, and hydrocarbon. China is doing One Belt, One Silk Road project. And it is a very huge project where they are using sun energy, hydrogen energy, and they created one nearly sun-like power station by hydrogen. So it is very huge. We cannot compare with that. So BRICS countries are, I feel, as I am going in the BRICS conferences, I feel BRICS countries are overcoming, and they are using traditional method to the hydrogen method of the energy resourcing. And they are careful, they are conscious, and they are working on energy issues to take care of their future and to save energy sector for their next generations.
Fine, fantastic. Thanks. And I think mostly I've been able to try to sum up things which our learned panelists have been able to share. I would now request and open any questions from the audiences, please. Just pass the mic. Shall I give?
Sir, my question to the panel is, sir, with UK, sir, being one of the global leaders in clean tech energy, ranking 4th globally in the 2024 Environmental Index, sir, what in the panel's views could be the recent FTA? Can it help India bridge the technological gap in clean energy through transfer of technology or attracting FDI in this sector? Or do you think, sir, this will cause more harm than benefit, sir? Because considering UK's stringent labor laws and its push for implementations and policies such as CBAM, due to which it might lead to India making peak emissions faster, thereby impacting its industrial growth. Thank you.
See, what is your good name?
Karthik, ma'am.
Karthik. You are in which sector?
Ma'am, I'm son-in-law of Dr. Deepak Jain. Otherwise, I'm an army officer.
Okay. Good introduction. See, development takes its own time. We cannot say that today we will make plan in this hall or in Prime Minister office we will make plan and next day or next month or next 1 year it will be executed. During last 80 years of development, because after United Nations development and other institutions development, world was following it, world was using the instruction of America and Western world. But now what we observed during last 25 years after economic crisis, that BRICS countries or Eastern world not getting their equal rights. They were also wanted to be equal to France, to America, but they are not getting that space to grow. Today I want to make hydrogen plant in my country, but I don't have FDI, I don't have clear policies to do it. So what you will do? You can make good project on your table. You can make good project with Federation of Indian Industry. But when time comes, time makes its own time. Because maybe policy will make when machines will come, some flood will come or some sea rules will come, okay. So I think that everything which we are developing today, we should have good vision, good practices to execute it, and good common team. Because if we are having good team to execute and to follow up the vision, we will success definitely. And that is the success of BRICS, because 17 years back when I started BRICS work after leaving my World Bank job, everybody was saying that you are doing very big mistake. It is like a madness. But I understand that time that World Bank will not succeed. It was my vision that BRICS will succeed. And everywhere, wherever I went to government departments, Ministry of External Affairs in the beginning, everybody said that BRICS will not success. It is a group of 5 beggars. One very important person, I cannot say his name, he told me it is a group of 5 beggar people, how they will defeat America. But after 17 years, you can see what is happening. If unity is there, vision is there, and good team is there, you can success. So if you are making your projects with vision, you will get success. And India is having very good position, very good nations, friendship, cooperation, and funds also. Funds is not a problem. If you are having clear projects, investors are there. And for hydrogen energy, Dr. Kaur is saying that Europe develop a hydrogen bank. You can make your projects and you can go and you can have very good initiative. Similarly, now in BRICS countries, BRICS is having very good new development bank, and it is working on energy sector. This is first priority. And in India, we are having very good combination. We are working from nuclear energy, hydrogen energy to local energy resources. So this is very good combination, and we will be able to make India as a Vishwaguru and leader in energy sector. Thank you.
I would like to add to ma'am. So ma'am rightly said what it's important for us to collaborate. From scientific perspective, I have written one article also which was published in Ministry of Science and Technology about science diplomacy in hydrogen, specifically beyond silos. So from scientific purpose, like when we do science-based research in lab, it's important that we should collaborate. Otherwise, it's going to be wastage of resources. Like the same researcher is working on the same topic here and then other part of the world. This will definitely help to leapfrog technologies. Thank you.
Synergy.
Yes, there's going to, otherwise it's going to be overlap. Similar research, we are doing similar research, they are doing. So definitely collaboration will help to leapfrog.
Okay, that was a great insight on the session. I would like to thank our moderator, Shri Sanjay Rikhiji, and the panelists.
Can I
Sure, sir.
It's kind of, myself Deepak Jain, it's kind of a statement come question. We go through a lot of studies where we find the carbon footprint of a vegetarian person is 50% lesser than a person who is a non-vegetarian.
Correct.
और यहाँ हम हॉल में बोलते हैं कि ये पावर प्लांट का एमिशन कमती करो, इसका एमिशन कमती करो। तो मैं उन सबको एडवाइस करता हूँ, आप अपना एमिशन कम करो। मेरा फुटप्रिंट कैसा है? 140 करोड़ लोगों का फुटप्रिंट कैसा है? हमको एक क्वेश्चन अपने ऊपर डालना पड़ेगा। और हमारा लार्जली वेजिटेरियन पॉपुलेशन है इंडिया की, हमारा फुटप्रिंट वैसे ही कमती है। हम सोचे इंग्लैंड वाला बताएगा हमको फुटप्रिंट कैसा होना चाहिए। दैट्स ए फुलिश अप्रोच टू द इक्वेशन। कभी नहीं हो सकता। जो आदमी अपनी गाय को मीट खिलाता है कि वो बीफ ज़्यादा प्रोड्यूस करेगी, वो हमको बताएगा कि फुटप्रिंट कैसा होना चाहिए, कि तकनीक कैसी होनी चाहिए। तो हमको अपने वर्च्यूज़ को देखना चाहिए। जहाँ ज़रूरत हो वहाँ लीजिए टेक्नोलॉजी, जहाँ नहीं ज़रूरत है काम का गोरी चमड़ी देख करके इनवाइट कैसे कर लेंगे उसको, भैया हमको तकनीक देगा, दे ही नहीं सकता कभी। तो इतना ही मैं ऐड करूँगा कि हमारे पास सब कुछ है, प्रेजेंटेशन नहीं है। हम सर्टिफाई नहीं कर सकते अपने 140 करोड़ लोगों को, बस इतनी ही बात है। Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I would now request, sorry.
My name is S.N. Sharma. I'm former Director, Ministry of MSME, Government of India. All the panelists, they have talked about solar power, wind power, biofuel, hydrogen. Unfortunately, Mr. Chaudhary, advisor to the Chief Minister, is not here. I'm quoting the example of Haryana. Haryana, there is a lot of industrial estates in the entire state, including Gurgaon and others. Haryana government has a scheme for the solar power, but they have put a restriction that you cannot produce more than 100 kilowatt. If you produce it, you will be punished. On one side, we are talking about scaling of the power, usko apna renewable power, green power, zero emission की बात कर रहे हैं. आप किसी गांव में जाइए, you talk to the सरपंच of that village, कि भाई have you ever heard about ये solar power, wind power government का? उसको ये तो पता है ये खाद क्या है, ये कौन सी स्कीम है, रोड कैसे बनेगी, पानी, ये सारी चीज़ें पता है. औरतों को पेंशन कैसे मिलेगी. लेकिन इसके लिए अवेयरनेस, स्केलिंग की बात हम करते हैं. अगर हम कैपेसिटी बढ़ानी, स्केलिंग की है, वहाँ जो सोलर पावर्स हैं, जो लगा भी लेता है हुडूप पावर में, 2-4 साल के बाद उसके लिए मेंटेनेंस के लिए कुछ नहीं है, बंद पड़ा रहता है. तो इसको जब तक हमारी इंटीग्रेट नहीं करेंगे, एजुकेशन नहीं करेंगे, अवेयरनेस नहीं करेंगे, तो वी कैनॉट स्केल अप. अगर उसके स्केल अप करना है, जॉब क्रिएशन होगा, आपकी पावर आएगी. जस्ट इमेजिन solar power used to cost 10 rupees about 10 years back. Now it is 2 rupees. ये सिर्फ गवर्नमेंट की पॉलिसी को होने से हुआ है. अभी भी जो है आई कैन गिव यू, आपने सोलर पावर को सैंक्शन कर दिया किसी इंडस्ट्रीज को कि आप इतना करिए. वेयर इज द लैंड? उसको प्रोजेक्ट 4 साल से रुका पड़ा है. एक्विजिशन ऑफ लैंड इज ए प्रॉब्लम. उसमें गवर्नमेंट कहती है हाथ जोड़ती है, हम नहीं कर सकते कुछ, आप अपने आप देखिए. तो ये सारी चीज़ें जो है प्रैक्टिकल हैं. अभी जो वर्किंग ग्रुप बनाया है, मेरे ख्याल में वर्किंग ग्रुप में ये इशू को रेज करना चाहिए और वो इसका सोल्यूशन होगा. दिस इज व्हाट आई वांट टू से.
आपके क्वेश्चन में ही आंसर छुपा हुआ है. जो मुझे मैसेज मिला आपसे वो यही मिला कि अवेयरनेस क्रिएट होनी चाहिए और जो ऑब्स्टिकल्स जो आप बोल रहे हैं, जो बैरियर्स हैं, उनको ही रिमूव करने का समाधान लोकल पॉपुलेशन के पास बेस्ट है. दैट्स इट मैं कह सकता हूँ इसके बारे में. राइट.
Okay, so with this session, let's thank our moderator and panelists for such an insightful and engaging discussion. That was an excellent start to the technical deliberations of the day. I would now request Shri Vinod Bapra, President, FIIR HR Chapter, to facilitate Shri Sanjay Rikhiji. Request Shri Jitendra Khemka, Chair, Banking Committee, to facilitate Shri Mukul Saxena ji. Request Shri Mukesh Kuja ji to come and facilitate, please. Dr. Shailendra Vyas, Chair, Skill Development and Startup Committee, to facilitate Dr. Supreet Kaur. Shri G.L. Khanna, Chair Sports Committee, to facilitate Ms. Purnima Anand. Shri Sanjeev Arora ji, to facilitate Dr. Parminder Kaur. Yeah, no?
अभी इनका सम्मान हो रहा है इन सबका इसके लिए फैसिलिटेट करने के लिए
In sab कौन है?
इसका इनका नाम काट दीजिए इन सबका होना है ठीक है इनके लिए उदितेंदु वर्मा
1, 2 का होना है, 3 का होना है, 4 का होना है.
4 का नहीं होना है
अच्छा.
इनका होना
और उनके लिए बनाने के लिए
है उदितेंदु वर्मा प्लस मुकेश सखुजा
मुकेश
सखुजा
Sakhuja. Let's facilitate some of our esteemed guests. Mr. Vinod Bapra, President, FIA and HR Chapter. Request Uditendu Verma ji to come and facilitate, please. And Mukesh Sakhuja ji. Dr. Shailendra Vyas, Chair, Skill Development and Startup Committee. G.L. Khanna, Chair, Sports Committee. Sanjeev Arora ji.
ठीक है
Thank you, everyone. We'll now start with session 2. I would ask all the guests to. Okay, let's have a group photograph, please.
दीपक जी को बुला लीजिए और ऑर्गेनाइजिंग कमेटी आ जाएगी ग्रुप फोटो के लिए
Okay, I would request Dr. Deepak Jain and the organizing committee to come forward, please.
लिमिका जी आइए शैलन जी
Thank you, everyone.